And welcome, everybody, to another Nothing Like a Good Book with Mark Bishop. Thank you for the letters. Thank you for the phone calls. I do appreciate your support, and I really am so happy that you enjoy the interviews that we're doing. The books are great, aren't they? And like this one, you're going to enjoy. Patrick Asare is my guest. He's the story of a hard-won, successful person that offers insight into what it looks like to overcome real fears and incredible hurdles in life. We think we've had it hard. With courage, optimism, perseverance, and love, and all those things make it work for him. Now, he grew up in the jungles of Ghana and now thriving in suburban America. Patrick Asare defied all the odds on his journey through life. And his incredible memoir, The Boy from Boadua, One African's Journey of Hunger and Sacrifice in Pursuit of a Dream. He recounts his childhood, family education, and the experiences that made him into the person he is today, in addition to reflecting as socio-cultural relations, race, and the social structures in the different countries that he's lived in. Patrick Asare offers a new perspective as someone who has had first-hand experience in a variety of cultures, specifically within the education system. You'll be able to see a trailer of this particular book. It's the book trailer that they're doing more of these days. It's on the site. It's very nice. Have a look at it. Now, before I go into it with Patrick, I want to talk about Grady Harp. He is an Amazon Top 100 Hall of Fame reviewer. He had this to say about this particular book. It's a debut book for Patrick Asare. He delivers his life experiences in his memoir. It's a book that not only is well written, but it also provides one of the most informed visions of life from a vantage rarely equaled. While it is important to view his life journey as a series of successful achievements, the joy of reading this book is the candor and the honesty and the constant sense of discovery that exudes from every page. Wow. That's a nice write-up. Patrick was born and raised in Boadua, a small village in Ghana, Africa, where your family lived in an extreme poverty. Is that correct, Patrick? And welcome.
That is correct. And thank you, Mark, for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome, my friend. You've come a long way, and I think people are going to enjoy your book and get something out of it to get on with life. Everybody's been through a tough time the last few years. You know, your family relied on farming, selling fish just to get by. You attended elementary school in Boadua, where most children were not expected to gain a higher education. However, you discovered a love for reading and knowledge, apparently, at a young age. And apparently you would not stop at nothing to continue your schooling in order to give yourself and your family a better life. Is that a fair assumption, Patrick?
Yeah, that's a wonderful summary. And thank you for your very nice, kind words about my book. You're absolutely correct. So I was born in this small village called Boadua, which is in Ghana, West Africa. And I was one of 14 children growing up in a household born to two illiterate parents. And so this was a small farming village where I would say 99% of the parents there, similar to my parents, were illiterate. And so education was really not a priority for anyone. I mean, life was a constant battle for survival. And so, it was subsistence farming, which my father did to take care of 14 children. My mother was stay at home, and our days were filled with nonstop chores from 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes you went to farm before to work on the farm a little bit before you went to school, and so that was the life in this village.
Well, we talk about your love of education. I mean, after being accepted into secondary school, you eventually traveled, of all things, to the Soviet Union to continue your education, and finally then on to America, where you gained your advanced degrees in engineering. So that's a lot of study, and well done to you. The Flying Books Review says nothing stops Patrick Asare. It's an incredible story of how he escaped abject poverty in Africa by realizing at a young age the importance of learning how to read. It was your ticket to becoming finally educated in the Ukraine and the United States. I'm glad you were there earlier. A true inspirational and uplifting memoir deserving of Hollywood attention. Look, your love of education is evident in your story. Your motivation is seeking knowledge, pulling yourself out of poverty by doing so. And in fact, you write, my journey began with the accidental discovery of an interesting piece of information on a discarded scrap of newspaper. Now, that information triggered the series of events that ultimately took me on a magical journey around the world. So, tell us about this newspaper find, Patrick.
So I've described a little bit how the childhood was. And so there was a small elementary and middle school in this village, Boadua, which is called Boadua. So the children born in this village were not expected to go anywhere. So the primary education and middle school was a stopping point, because in Ghana at the time, secondary schools, which is the equivalent of high school in America, secondary schools were boarding schools. And so children like me had to leave my home in the village to go live in a boarding house in a bigger town. And you had to pay tuition for that, which is most people in villages like mine couldn't afford, to do that. So that's why most children stopped at middle school. So that was the expectation for every child in the village when I was growing up there, including me. What made the difference in my case was you talked about my love of reading, discovering a love of reading at an early age. So this love of reading and the curiosity that comes with it, I was walking around the village square one morning, and I came upon this piece of newspaper lying on the ground. And I picked it up because this was a village with no libraries. No homes had any books in them, and there was no library anywhere. So,
right.
Yeah, so finding something to read as a child who loved reading was a challenge, and that's what caused me to pick up the scrap of newspaper, because I saw words written on it. So I picked it up and I read it, and what I read on it was a segment of an article that talked about the most exclusive high school, secondary school in Ghana, which was set up by the British during colonial rule. Ghana used to be a colony of Britain.
That's
and
right.
So they set up this school to educate the children of the country's elite, the colonial governors, the ministers of state, professors, ambassadors. So those were the children that went to this exclusive school. And I've always compared it to Eton College in the UK. That's the school that educates most of Britain's prime ministers and influential people. That was the equivalent of this of this school I'm talking about in Ghana. So I read about this school on that scrap of newspaper, and the article went on to say that children who went to this school ended up attending universities at either Oxford or Cambridge in England, and then they come back to Ghana and they become the president, prime minister, and the most influential people. And so I was about 9 years old, and I read this article, and it makes an instant impression on me, and I decide that I want to be one of those people. So I begin the whole process of trying to gain admission to this exclusive boarding school in the capital, Accra. And the best thing that happened to me at that moment was I couldn't tell anyone about it because my parents were illiterate. They wouldn't understand anything I was saying. So I just started this mission to gain admission to the secondary school. And so I lived in a village with no electricity, no running water, and so finding light to study was my first challenge. We had 2 kerosene lamps at home that.
Well, it didn't stop you, did it? It didn't stop you reading, and it didn't stop you learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Well, let's face it. In some parts of Africa and other developing nations, illiteracy rates are very, very high. Parents simply do not know enough about education to even begin to talk to their children about its importance, right? The comparison, as you write in your book, in America, every adult has at least some exposure to the education system. And I have heard many people in minority communities admit that it was their failure to focus on education that ruined their lives. Such parents And then you write, such parents must share this extremely important lesson with their children.
Yes.
It's very important. Kids today, mate, their heads are in phones. They're not reading. Look, let me ask you this. Like most people in Ghana's rural areas in those days, much of your childhood, you pictured America as a heavenly place where neither poverty nor any of the myriad of problems, existed. So from what little history you were taught in elementary and middle school, you did read about slavery and how blacks in America were treated during that era, but you also knew that slavery had long since been abolished, and you envisioned, an America in which people of all races lived happily and in perfect harmony. Mm-hmm. That's what you imagined then. How do you found it now?
Yeah, so that's an interesting piece of information you pull from.
I'll put you on the spot. Go on.
Yeah. And that's great. So the exactly as you say, a lot of us, especially growing up in that village, had this very romantic idea of America, and up to today, that's even still the case.
Good to hear. That's all I wanted to hear on that one. So we'll leave it at that. Because there's a reason I brought this in. You saw a man being beaten to death. This is in your village. You're a young boy.
Yes.
And you ran like the devil, panting heavily from running so hard. Who he was fighting with, she asked, her anger abating a bit. Some people accused him of stealing from a farm, and several men joined together to beat him. Several men. Okay, did he steal? Was he guilty, this particular person?
So that's a very interesting question. So in America, when someone is accused of something, the judicial system takes over and does a whole bunch of investigation to establish guilt.
So the comparison here is in where you grew up, there's none of that. It's you're guilty, bang, and then they're into you.
Exactly. So there's a instant trial and instant punishment. I mean, nobody bothers to do any fact finding. That was the environment.
Right, which led really to an enormous amount of fear for you, unquestionably. It was a powerful motivator for you to get out of there, right?
Exactly.
You had difficulty relating to anyone because socioeconomically you had nothing in common with the other boys, right? You grew up in a village with no amenities. Akimoto classmates lived in mansions in big cities and spent their vacations abroad, but you were on the other side. Places London, Paris, and New York. You saw all of this. It must have made you say, one day I'll be there. I want that too,
Yeah. Yes. So that was a great difficulty in much of secondary school because he was this village boy that arrived on the first night in secondary school. I went to the cafeteria and the dining hall, and I didn't know how to use the utensils. I mean, I had never used a fork and knife in my life until I got there that first night. And in the dining hall, I was required, to use utensils instead of my fingers that I had used to eat throughout my life. And so meeting these sophisticated children from the big cities and towns, from wealthy homes. I couldn't relate to them in any way.
But, I was going to say, you must have felt like a fish out of water, to be honest.
Exactly.
I feel for you. Not that I ever ate with my fingers, but here's the deal. I was at boarding schools, and I was at a particular college, Assumption College of Kilmore is where I went to, and I felt, you're talking about serviette rings with your name on them, and then you had to wear certain stuff. But you learnt the fact of serving others and sitting at the head and the head of the table and, the delivering and sharing the food amongst people. So there were other good things. But look, here's what I want to ask you. What was the process of choosing what to include in this memoir?
So another great question. So with the length of the journey that I traveled from the village through the Soviet Union to America. I've been in America for 31. This is my 31st year in America. So really, It's a lot of information and reflections and things like that. So that was one of the biggest struggles, and I worked with editors. I mean, to really pare the material down. So when I first started writing this book, the motivation was out of my teaching experience in this inner city school district in America, and what I found there, the dysfunction and the difficulty basically educating children who come from very difficult environments. And so that was going to be my primary focus of the book. And so I was originally I was going to do a series of questions and answer format essays, but then the original readers of the manuscript kept telling me that the personal story, my personal story, was a more compelling tale, and so they encouraged me to concentrate on that. So that's what I went back and did, and then so
was it difficult recounting, the certain memoirs or the memories that you went through over a lifetime? Was it difficult?
Not at all, because the memories, the stories that I share in the book are so so sort of haunting. And for example, my times that I spent in the jungle with my father on the farm, and the encounters with deadly snakes. And going to the river. I mean, walking through treacherous terrain, carrying buckets. So those are memories that you never forget. And so recounting those memories was it wasn't difficult. I mean, I had to speak with my siblings about some of the more sort of distant aspects, trying to figure out. When I was writing this book, both of my parents had passed away, and so I couldn't interview them. So some of the stories relating to my parents, I had to rely on memories of some of my older siblings. But overall, I mean, I didn't have too much trouble recounting memories.
All right, I got a lot of questions to get through here with you now. So what advice would you give to someone growing up in a situation such as yours?
Yes, a very, very important question. So when this whole journey began, when I picked up that scrap of newspaper and read this piece of information on it, and embarked on this journey, I mean, I had no idea what the process was like, and what it was going to entail. So, any disadvantaged, child starting out life, the number one thing you want to do is, get off your feet and stand up and start doing. Number one, set a goal in front of you. I mean, for most children, it's education. And so set a goal. I mean, define what you want to do with your life, and then and then just start, because
get on with it. Right, fair enough.
And get on with it.
So
yes.
You mentioned in your book that you did have a lot of luck, rather, in order to get where you are now.
Yes.
Briefly answering me, what advice would you give to someone who might not have the same luck?
Yes. Another great question. So what I found about luck, I mean, you hear the expression, you make your own luck.
Right.
A lot of times. So luck is critically important in everything we do as humans. But it is, as we know, it is also very elusive. I mean, luck doesn't fall on everyone, but it is a matter of getting on with life and starting something, because if you are the philosopher Seneca said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So you have to constantly be preparing yourself, because it is through that preparation that you get on the path where you meet luck. And so luck happens when you put yourself on a path and in positions to enjoy luck when it happens.
By the sounds of it, it's called you make your own luck.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, since you reflected on society and culture in your book, Patrick, what strategies do you think would be helpful, to solve some of the socio-cultural issues that you brought up?
Yeah. So for me, the most important thing for me that I've learned relating to people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, religions, is to get close to people and to know them. I mean, we tend as people to sort of keep ourselves in silos. I mean, we tend to associate with people that we know, we are comfortable with. But this is a big world that is out there. All kinds of people. Like I traveled all the way from my village. I mean, to live in America. I went to the Soviet Union. So we live in a world today where you're going to be exposed to all kinds of people. So the number one thing is, I mean, you want to keep an open mind and be receptive to differences, whether it's race, culture, religion. So that openness. I mean, and this is one thing I learned the hard way. I went to the Soviet Union terrified about the Soviets I was going to meet there, because people. Yeah. People kept telling me the KGB was going to be on my tail. I mean,
all that sort
constantly.
Of stuff. Scare the devil out of you. Yeah, a little bit more than Ghana.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you taught for a time too as a teacher here in the States.
Yes.
And the behavior of your students apparently led you to explore all this about the socio-cultural differences between, Ghana and America.
Yes.
And how circumstances can create drastically different people, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really the bones behind it. That's what you wanted to share. Were there any experiences or events, do you think, that you left out of your book that you want to share? I mean, that you'd want to include in your life story now?
Not really. I mean, I like who was saying. I mean, the manuscript, the final manuscript, the original draft actually had a lot more information. Typical book length, sort of about maybe 80,000 to 100,000 words for a typical book. So the draft manuscript had about 120,000 words, and so we had to cut a lot out of the manuscript, and so some of the details of my time in the Soviet Union we left out, right. And some Ghanaian sort of background stories we cut out, and so those would be the only things I would say I would have liked to include a bit more detail. And some readers have actually said they would have liked to hear more about my time in the Soviet Union, but otherwise I think I covered much of the ground that I wanted to cover. Really.
Well, Lauren Lee is a well-known writer. The Boy from Boadua is a reflection on education, society, culture, and the impact that different forces have on a developing person. And he leads the reader through the harrowing but miraculous journey of his life. The combination makes for a fascinating read. I tend to agree with that. Your journey is both inspiring. It's also heart-wrenching, Patrick, as you recall triumphs and some hardships with your experience recounting your view on the world and different cultures. But, I think it's an unbelievable story for all ages that teaches really. The biggest thing I got out of this was the importance of education and understanding the social, cultural, and political factors that shape a person. Right? Yes. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Well, this is why it's a fascinating read. From working in a harsh jungle, for God's sake, snakes all around you, and God knows what else are going to gobble you up, and then struggling to even afford food, to traveling to a new country like the Ukraine. I mean, how did you learn to speak Russian? How did you learn, to survive? And then finally, you end up in the American school system. I wonder if it should be a film, to be honest. Do you have that in mind? Is that a goal, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see this on a big screen. So
The Ghana bit in the jungles. I don't know if I'd want to be in there directing that. I am a part owner of a film company, and I write and produce as well, and I do acting, and I could see it's got a lot of color in this one, you know, blood and guts with the poor devil being beaten up by the several and so on. Well, you know, you do bring this story together in a thought-provoking, exciting and compelling way. It does combine, you know, your journey with the lessons you learned along the way. Now, people, I've told you about, go to markbishopmedia.com. You're going to see the write-up and the bio on Patrick and his photo, and also the link to the actual video. All right, and that gets, this podcast gets posted out all across America anyway, so the link will be on that as well. But, mate, I think this is a terrific, it's your debut book, isn't it? It's your first book.
Yes, it's my first book, yes.
Right. And by the way, where could I buy it if I wanted to?
Thank you for that. So the book is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.com. And you can also find it at your local independent bookstore. A bunch of local independent bookstores carry them. So please check with your local stores. If they don't have them, you can certainly find the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
And there's one more you haven't mentioned, of course, and that would be, what do you think? Your own website.
Yes, exactly. And again, thank you for that. That's really important. So my website, you can find a lot of information about me, about the book trailer. I have a couple of book trailers on the website, actually. The website is patrickasareauthor.com, and Asare is spelled A-S-A-R-E, so patrickasareauthor.com. And talking about covering the world, I mean, I'm very, very interested in geopolitics, especially living in Ukraine for 6 years during my time in the Soviet Union. I lived in Kyiv and Kharkiv and Donetsk. So very, very familiar with the war terrain that's going on now. So I do write a lot of, I keep a blog on my website, so you can find my blog articles, a lot of articles about Ukraine, the Soviet Union, and geopolitics in general on my website.
Well, you had to learn Russian, which I think is another credit to you. I mean, I'd never get my head around this one, but speak a little Russian to me.
Как дела? До свидания.
That's goodbye, isn't it? That's for or good luck? Was it something like that?
До свидания is goodbye.
Oh,
yes.
Well, you want to go then? Okay, well, we can cut off now if you want. But Now, listen, tell me, because before we go, living in the Ukraine, before all this war and the shocking stuff that's going on, tell me, was it good to live there? Were the people happy? Was life, normal?
Yes, so that was actually one of the things that surprised me the most when I arrived in the Soviet Union, and I went there in 1985, right at the beginning of President Gorbachev's perestroika.
All right.
And yes, so and I went in there. So I arrived in Moscow in August of 1985, barely about 5 months after President Gorbachev came into office. So, and I spent about a week, a few days in Moscow before I was sent to Kyiv. I mean, to go to language school at Kyiv State University.
Wow.
And this was back in the Soviet days, and life was very simple, straightforward. And the Soviets were not allowed to travel. So the life that they knew was just what was within the Soviet borders. And they came across the Soviets, the Ukrainians mostly that I lived with, came across as very simple, low key people, and they went about their daily lives with satisfaction, and they treated us quite well. And so all the pictures and the impressions I had about Soviets when I went there, they were all sort of dismantled, because I came across people who were very kind and very open to us. I write about my my Soviet roommate who I lived in the dormitory room in Kyiv that first year when I was learning the language. I mean, I didn't want to make eye contact with him in the beginning, because I highly suspected that he was KGB spy who was.
Right.
But by the end of the year, I mean, I discovered that he was the most gentle soul. I mean, the kindest person he could. And so we see the stories today about. What Russians are doing in Ukraine. I mean, I always, in my articles, I always separate the average Russian, the ordinary Ukrainian Russian, from what the elitists are doing. Because, I mean, if you lived in that place like I did, I mean, you saw real human beings. I mean, who were, like any one of us.
So in closing, how do you feel now when you see what you see? With the vision on the news and the newsreels of an evening and the television news in relation to the bodies they're finding and everything else. I mean, does it make you feel sick?
Oh, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I consider Ukraine to be I consider it to be a native country of mine, just like Ghana. I'm an American citizen now, but I spent 6 years with Ukrainians living in dormitory rooms and sitting right next to them in classrooms. And some of my classmates are the ones on the front lines, and so it is heartbreaking for me. And by just praying that this carnage, this madness, I mean, stops. And so for me, it's really heartbreaking because of my personal relationship with the Ukrainians.
Patrick Asare's story of hard-won success. It offers insight into what it looks like to overcome very real fears and incredible hurdles in life. And you do that with courage, you do it with optimism, perseverance, and love. Right, the boy from Boadua. Not a boudoir, but Boadua. The author is Patrick Asare, ladies and gentlemen. Buy the darn thing. It's an excellent book. Well done, my friend. And to what you've traveled, from the jungles of Ghana, it's a credit to you. And, makes me look up to you. And I thank you. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you sharing with our audience.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Goodbye now. Das Venya, what was it?
Do svidania.
Do svidania. Do svidania, amigo.